King Taiho had cleaned up many terrible things in his 15 years as a teleport remediation specialist. He had seen packages fused with walls, their contents forever trapped inside concrete. He had seen animals merged with shipping containers, still breathing but unable to move. Once, he had seen a diplomat arrive with his organs rearranged in ways that should have killed him instantly. The man survived. Humans always did, somehow. It was 3 in the morning when his wristcom buzzed with a priority Omega alert. Taiho was sitting in his small apartment in Neo-Bizon, drinking cold tea and staring at an old photograph. The picture showed a woman standing in a garden full of flowers. He did not look at it often, but tonight he could not sleep. The alert changed everything. Priority Omega meant something very bad had happened. In his entire career, Taiho had only seen 2 Omega alerts. The first was a cruise ship that arrived with all its passengers fused together into one screaming mass. The second was a military base that materialized underground, killing everyone inside. He grabbed his jacket and ran outside. A shuttle was already waiting for him, its engines humming in the dark street. The door opened, and Park Yuna waved at him from the pilot's seat. She was 28 years old, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had been his partner for 3 years now. "Get in," she said. "It's bad." Taiho climbed into the shuttle and strapped himself in. "How bad?" Yuna lifted the shuttle into the air and flew toward the city center. "City Block 7, she said. "All of it." Taiho felt his stomach drop. City Block 7 was a residential area. Apartments, schools, shops, restaurants. 12,000 people lived there. "What do you mean, all of it?" The Veluxy Consortium was testing their new teleporter. They wanted to show everyone that their technology was better than ours. They teleported the entire block as a demonstration. Yuna's voice was tight with anger. Something went wrong. What kind of wrong? Yuna did not answer immediately. She flew the shuttle over the city, and Taiho saw it for himself. Where City Block 7 used to be, there was now something impossible. Buildings stood upside down, their roofs buried in the ground, and their foundations reaching toward the sky. Streets curved inward like the inside of a ball. Lights flickered in windows that faced the wrong direction. The whole area looked like someone had taken a piece of the city and turned it inside out, like a glove pulled off a hand. Taiho had seen many terrible things, but he had never seen anything like this. "The Veluxy engineers ran away," Yuna said bitterly. "They said the situation is unsalvageable. They left 12,000 people to die." The shuttle landed at a command post set up near the edge of the inversion zone. Dozens of emergency vehicles surrounded the area, their lights flashing red and blue. Soldiers kept crowds of worried family members away from the barrier. News drones flew overhead, broadcasting the disaster to the entire galaxy. Director Baek Soo-jin was waiting for them. She was 52 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen too many emergencies. She ran the Human Emergency Response Division, and she never wasted time on small talk. "Taiho Yuna," she said, "we have 6 hours before dimensional collapse. After that, everyone inside dies." "What about the Veluxy?" Taiho asked. "It's their technology. They should fix it. They refuse. They say the human brain cannot survive spatial inversion. They say everyone inside is already dead, they just don't know it yet." Director Baek's voice was cold with fury. "They offered to euthanize the block. A mercy killing, they called it." Yuna made a disgusted sound. "Mercy. I told them no," Director Baek continued. "I told them we would handle it ourselves. Now, I need you to prove me right." Taiho looked at the inverted city block. He could see lights moving inside, flickering between impossible angles. People were still alive in there. People were waiting for help. "We need more information," he said. "What exactly happened during the teleport?" Director Baek handed him a datapad. "The Veluxy teleporter uses a different method than ours. It folds space instead of cutting through it. When they tried to fold the city block, something rejected the process. The fold collapsed inward instead of outward." Taiho studied the data. The numbers were strange, unlike anything he had seen before. Their system wasn't designed for this many people. The Veluxy only teleports small groups. They have static minds, one perspective at a time. Humans are different. Our brains are too flexible, too adaptive. We broke their machine. Can you fix it? Director Beak asked. I don't know yet. I need to go inside and see how bad the damage is. Another shuttle landed nearby and a man jumped out. It was Oh Minho, a field medic who had served with Taiho in the military years ago. He was 38, with broad shoulders and a face that smiled easily, even in bad situations. Heard you needed someone who doesn't mind getting turned inside out, Minho said. I brought medical supplies and a strong stomach. Taiho almost smiled. Good, we'll need both. The three of them gathered their equipment and walked toward the barrier. Beyond it, the inverted city block waited like a wound in reality. Taiho could feel the wrongness of it, a pressure in his head that made his teeth ache. Yuna, you handle the technical readings? Minho, you're on medical. I'll navigate. He looked at his team. Stay close. If you get separated in there, we might never find you. He stepped through the barrier and entered the impossible. The first thing Taiho noticed was that gravity pulled in several directions at once. His body wanted to fall up, down, and sideways all at the same time. His stomach lurched, and for a moment he thought he would be sick. Then his brain adjusted, picking one direction and committing to it. That was the thing about humans. Their minds were not rigid like Velexi minds. When reality broke, humans simply chose a new reality and believed in it hard enough to make it work. They walked deeper into the inversion zone. Walls breathed around them, expanding and contracting like living things. The sky was beneath their feet, a dark expanse of stars where the ground should be. Above them, streets and buildings hung like a ceiling, pipes and cables dangling down like strange vines. Yuna's scanner beeped rapidly. I'm picking up life signs. Hundreds of them. People are still alive in here. Then we keep moving, Taiho said. Somewhere in the distance, a child was crying. The sound echoed through the twisted streets, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Taiho followed it anyway, trusting his instincts to guide him through the impossible geometry. 12,000 people were waiting to be saved, and Taiho would not let them down. The deeper they went, the stranger the world became. Taiho led his team through streets that curved in directions that should not exist. Buildings twisted around themselves like paper folded by a child. Windows looked into rooms that were also outside. Doors opened onto staircases that climbed down into the sky. And yet, people had survived. They found the first group of survivors in what used to be a grocery store. The walls had folded inward, creating a pocket of almost normal space in the middle of the chaos. 30 people huddled together inside, their faces pale but determined. An old woman stood at the center of the group, directing people with calm authority. She was 71 years old, with white hair and a back that refused to bend. Her name was Shinbora, and she had lived in City Block 7 her entire life. You are the rescue team, she said when she saw Taiho. It was not a question. Why so? Kong Taiho, teleport remediation specialist. How did you organize all these people? Grandmother Bora shrugged like it was nothing special. When the world turned inside out, people panicked. Panic helps no one. So I told them to stop panicking and start thinking. We figured out which directions were safe and which ones would kill us. Then we started looking for others. Yuna stared at her scanner in disbelief. You navigated spatial inversion using just your senses. That should be impossible. The Veluxi said human brains can't process this kind of environment. The Veluxi do not know everything, Grandmother, Bora replied. Humans have been surviving impossible things since the beginning. We adapt. We always have. She explained what her group had learned. The inversion was not random. It followed patterns like a maze with rules. Sound traveled strangely, but if you listened carefully, you could use it to find your way. Light bent, but your eyes could learn to adjust. Gravity shifted, but your body could learn to balance. The children figured it out first, she admitted. Their minds are more flexible than ours. They learned to move through the twisted spaces like it was a game. Taiho watched as a group of children crawled through a gap in the wall that seemed too small to fit a cat. They emerged on the other side laughing like they were playing in a playground instead of surviving a disaster. The Veluxi had said humans would go insane in spatial inversion. Instead, humans were treating it like a puzzle to be solved. Minish checked the survivors for injuries. Most were bruised and scared, but alive. "We need to get these people out," he said. "The longer they stay in here, the more dangerous it becomes." Taiho nodded and activated his wristcom. "Director Beak, we found survivors. About 30 in the first pocket. They've organized themselves and mapped safe routes. We're going to push deeper." "Copy that," Director Beak's voice crackled through the static. "We're detecting a large concentration of life signs near the center. A school. 200 children? A school?" Taiho felt his heart grow heavy. "We're on our way." Grandmother Bora stepped forward. "I'm coming with you. I know these streets. I can help you navigate." Taiho wanted to say no. It was too dangerous for a woman her age. But he saw the steel in her eyes and knew she would not listen. So he nodded and said, "Stay close." They left 10 survivors to guide the rest to safety and pushed deeper into the inversion zone. Grandmother Bora led them through alleys that bent like snakes and across rooftops that faced the wrong way. She moved with surprising confidence, her memory of the neighborhood helping her see past the distortions. Along the way, they found more survivors. A family hiding in a bathroom that had somehow remained normal. A shop owner standing guard over his store with a metal pipe. A young couple who had tied themselves together with ropes so they would not get separated. Everyone was scared, but everyone was fighting to survive. "I got them," Yuna whispered to Taiho. Any other species would have given up by now. The Veluxi would be catatonic. The Morvani would have killed themselves rather than face this. But humans? We just keep going. Taiho nodded. He had seen it before, in smaller disasters. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest or the fastest. But they had something no other species possessed, the ability to believe in survival even when survival seemed impossible. They reached the edge of a large open space where the folding was most severe. The school was on the other side, visible through layers of twisted reality. Taiho could see the building, but it existed in multiple places at once, overlapping with itself like a photograph printed too many times. "The dimensional bleed is getting worse," Yuna said, checking her scanner. "Walls are starting to merge with organic material. If we don't hurry, people will become part of the buildings." Taiho studied the path ahead. There was only one way through, and it was the most dangerous route they had encountered. "What's the reading on that passage?" Yuna went pale. "Cause and effect are reversed in there. Time flows backward. If you get hurt, you'll feel the pain before the injury happens. Can we survive it? I don't know, maybe. Probably." She looked at him. "It's a risk." Taiho looked at the school. 200 children were waiting inside. Teachers were probably keeping them calm, telling them help was coming. He could not let them down. "We go through," he said. Minho gripped his medical bag tighter. "If time flows backward, how do we treat injuries?" "We'll figure it out." That's what humans do. They entered the reversal zone and everything changed. Taiho felt the wrongness immediately. His body knew what was about to happen before it happened. He stumbled, catching himself on a wall that shouldn't exist, and felt the bruise form on his palm before his hand even touched the surface. "This is impossible," Yuna gasped. She was experiencing the same thing, her body reacting to events that hadn't occurred yet. "Keep moving," Taiho ordered. "Don't think about it. Just move." They pushed forward through the madness. Minho tripped and fell, and for a terrible moment, Taiho saw him lying dead on the ground with a wound in his chest. Then the moment passed, and Minho was standing again, uninjured but shaking. "I died," Minho said. "I felt myself die." "But you didn't," Taiho replied. "Your brain showed you a possible future, but we didn't let it happen. Keep moving. We're almost through." They emerged on the other side, gasping and trembling. The school stood before them, twisted but intact. Through the windows, Taiho could see children's faces watching them. They had made it now. The real work could begin. While Taiho's team fought through impossible geometry, Director Beek Sujin faced a different kind of battle. She stood in the command tent, surrounded by screens showing the disaster from every angle. Beside her stood 3 Veluxy officials, their tall gray bodies wrapped in diplomatic robes, their large eyes watching the screens with cold interest. The lead Veluxy was named Counselor Veth. He spoke with a voice like dry leaves, scraping together. Director Beek, we must insist again. The merciful option remains available. A quick collapse of the dimensional field will end the suffering of those inside. Their suffering, Beek replied through clenched teeth, is that they are still alive and waiting for rescue. That is not the kind of suffering that requires killing. You do not understand? Counselor Veth tilted his head, a gesture of pity. Human cognition is not equipped for spatial inversion. Your people inside that zone are experiencing a form of madness they cannot comprehend. Every moment they survive is a moment of horror beyond your imagination. Beek pointed at one of the screens. It showed a live feed from a drone that had entered the inversion zone. On the screen, a group of humans was climbing through a twisted building, helping each other over obstacles, working together like a well-trained team. Does that look like madness to you? She asked. Counselor Veth watched the screen for a long moment. His large eyes blinked slowly. Fascinating, he murmured. They should not be capable of this. Humans are capable of many things your species cannot imagine, Beek said. Now, unless you have something helpful to offer, I suggest you stay out of our way. Inside the inversion zone, Taiho entered the school and found it in better condition than he expected. The building had twisted, yes, but some areas remained almost normal. And in those normal pockets, 200 children waited with remarkable calm. A young woman approached him. She was 34 years old, with tired eyes and steady hands. Her name was Imnari, and she was a teacher who had refused to leave her students behind. Are you the rescue team? She asked. Her voice was hoarse from talking, from keeping the children calm for hours. Yes, I'm Taiho. We're going to get you out. Nari nodded and led him through the school. The children sat in groups, organized by age. Some were drawing pictures. Some were sleeping. A few were crying quietly, but most were calm. They trusted their teacher to keep them safe. How did you manage this? Yuna asked in amazement. 200 children in spatial inversion, and they're not panicking? Nari pointed to the walls. They were covered in drawing screwed maps made with crayons and markers. Lines and arrows showed paths through the twisted hallways. Symbols marked dangerous areas. Colors indicated safe zones. The children made these, Nari explained. When the inversion happened, I was terrified. I had no idea what to do. But the children started exploring. They found patterns in the chaos. They drew maps so others could follow. They turned survival into a game. Taiho studied the maps. They were not perfect, but they showed something remarkable. Children's minds, flexible and creative, had decoded the inversion faster than any adult. They had turned impossible geometry into something they could understand. These maps, Yuna said slowly, they're not just drawings. They're logic patterns. The children figured out the rules of the inversion. They're smarter than they know, Nari said with pride. Grandmother Bora examined the maps with a careful eye. These match what we learned outside. The rules are the same throughout the zone. If we combine this knowledge, we might be able to find a path to the center. Taiho activated his wrist cum. Director Beek, we've reached the school. All children are alive and accounted for. We've also discovered something important. The survivors are mapping the inversion. They're figuring out how it works. There was a pause before Beek responded. Taiho the Veluxy are watching. They say what you're describing is impossible. Human minds shouldn't be able to process spatial inversion. To tell them to watch more closely. Humans are doing what they always do. We're adapting. Back at the command tent, Counselor Veth was staring at the screens with an expression that might have been shock. Other Veluxy officials were muttering to each other in their own language. One of them was taking notes rapidly. This data is extraordinary, Counselor Veth said. Your species perceives multiple spatial models simultaneously. You hold contradictory realities in your minds and function anyway. How is this possible? Beak crossed her arms. We evolved on a dangerous world. Our ancestors survived by imagining threats before they happened, by picturing different possibilities and preparing for all of them. We don't have static minds like yours. We have flexible minds. Minds that can bend without breaking. You're saying, Veth spoke slowly, that your cognitive instability is actually a survival advantage? I'm saying that what you call instability, we call imagination. And it has kept us alive through things that would have destroyed any other species. Inside the school, Minho finished checking the children for injuries. Most were unharmed. A few had cuts and bruises. One boy had a broken arm that had somehow healed wrong because of the time distortion, but Minho splinted it as best he could. We need to move, Taiho said. The dimensional bleed is getting worse. Soon the walls will start merging with flesh. Narray gathered the children and organized them into groups. Older children would help younger ones. Teachers would spread throughout the line to keep everyone calm. They had a system. They were ready. Grandmother Bora studied the children's maps one final time. There's a path. It's dangerous, but it leads out. If we move quickly, we can make it. Taiho looked at the 200 faces watching him. They were scared but trusting. They believed he could save them. He had to prove them right. Everyone stay close, he said. Hold hands. Don't let go, no matter what you see. We're going home. They began to move through the twisted school, following paths drawn by children's crayons, guided by human imagination through impossible geometry. Behind them, the dimensional bleed crept closer. Walls breathing and shifting, hungry to consume everything, but humans were faster. Humans always found a way. At the command tent, Director Beak received an update. Taiho's team is moving with all survivors. They're using locally created navigation maps. Success probability is increasing. Counselor Veth watched in silence. Finally, he spoke. We underestimated your species, Director Beak. We will not make that mistake again. Beak replied. You won't. They evacuated the children through the twisted corridors, following the maps drawn with crayons. It was slow work. Every few minutes, the walls shifted, and they had to find new paths. But they kept moving, one step at a time, and gradually they made progress toward the edge of the inversion zone. Then Yuna's scanner started screaming. Stop, she said, holding up her hand. Something's wrong. The dimensional collapse is accelerating. We don't have 6 hours anymore. We have maybe 2. Taiho looked at the children behind him. 200 young faces, trusting him completely. They would never make it out in time at this pace. What's causing the acceleration? Yuna studied her scanner, her face growing pale. The epicenter? The core of the inversion. Something's destabilizing. If we don't stop it, the whole zone will collapse inward and crush everyone inside. Grandmother Bora stepped forward. The epicenter? That's the old plaza, near the center of the block. What's there? According to these readings, it's where the Veluxi placed their stabilization matrix. The machine that was supposed to keep the teleport stable. Yuna shook her head. It's failing. And when it fails completely, everyone dies. Taiho made a decision. Nari, Grandmother Bora, keep leading the children out. Follow the maps. Don't stop for anything. What about you? Nari asked. I'm going to the epicenter. Yuna, Minho, you're with me. We need to fix that machine. They separated from the main group and pushed deeper into the inversion zone. The geometry became worse with every step. Walls folded into impossible shapes. The ground became, the ceiling became, the walls became the ground again. Taiho felt his mind bending, trying to make sense of things that had no sense. But he kept going. That's what humans did. They reached the plaza and found the Veluxi stabilization matrix. It was a massive machine, all smooth curves and glowing symbols, floating in the center of the most twisted space Taiho had ever seen. Reality itself seemed to be screaming around it, layers of existence overlapping and fighting for dominance. There Yuna pointed. The Matrix is rejecting something. It's treating human consciousness as a foreign element. Every human mind in this zone is interfering with its operation, Taiho understood. The Veloxi had built their teleporter for species with rigid, single-focus minds. Species that saw one reality at a time. But human minds were different. Human minds held multiple possibilities simultaneously. They imagined, they dreamed, they considered alternatives. That flexibility was overloading the alien system. Can we shut it down? Minho asked. Gas. If we shut it down, the inversion becomes permanent. Everyone trapped inside stays trapped forever. Yuna ran calculations on her scanner. We need to reprogram it. Make it understand human consciousness instead of rejecting it.
Ow!
Yuna hesitated. I have an idea. It's crazy. It might not work. Tell me. The Matrix is trying to fold reality back to its original state, but it doesn't know what the original state looked like. It only has Veloxi spatial data, which is wrong. We need to give it human spatial data. We need to show it what City Block 7 looked like before the inversion. How do we do that? Human memory. Yuna looked at Taiho with desperate hope. Every person in this zone remembers their home, their street, their view from the window. If we could collect all those memories, combine them into a single picture, we could feed it to the Matrix. Give it a template to follow, Taiho thought about it. 12,000 people, each remembering one piece of the neighborhood. Together, their memories could recreate the entire block. It was insane. It was impossible. It was their only chance. How do we connect 12,000 minds? He asked. The emergency broadcast system. Every building in the zone has speakers. If we can send a signal, tell everyone to remember their home at the same time, their mental patterns might be strong enough for the Matrix to detect. Minho shook his head. That's a lot of maybes. That's all we have, Yuna replied. Taiho activated his wristcom. Director Beak, I need you to patch me into the emergency broadcast system for City Block 7. Every speaker, every radio, every device that can receive a signal. There was a pause. Taiho, what are you planning? Something crazy? Trust me. Another pause. Then you're connected. Taiho took a deep breath and began to speak. His voice echoed through the twisted streets, through upside-down buildings, through spaces that should not exist. Everyone in City Block 7, this is Kung Taiho. I'm with the rescue team. I need your help. In 1 minute, I need every single one of you to close your eyes and remember your home. Remember what it looked like before today. Remember your apartment, your street, your neighborhood. Remember the view from your window. Remember the color of your walls, the smell of your kitchen, the sound of your neighbors. Hold that memory in your mind as strongly as you can. Our lives depend on it.
Nice.
He waited. 1 minute felt like forever. Then he gave the signal. All across the inversion zone. 12,000 people closed their eyes and remembered. Grandmother Bora remembered the grocery store where she bought vegetables every morning. The children remembered their school before it twisted. Families remembered their homes. Shop owners remembered their stores. Everyone held a piece of the puzzle in their minds. The Matrix detected the signal. Yuna watched her scanner as thousands of human memory patterns flooded into the alien machine. The Matrix tried to reject them, but there were too many. Human minds, flexible and creative, overwhelmed its rigid systems. It's working, Yuna whispered. The Matrix is accepting the data. It's rebuilding its template. But Taiho was struggling. To guide the process, he needed to hold an anchor memory, something strong and personal. And the only memory strong enough was the one he had been avoiding for 5 years. His wife's garden. She had died of illness when teleport technology might have saved her. But the accident rates were too high back then. He had become a remediation specialist because of her cleaning up the mistakes that had cost him everything. And he had never allowed himself to remember the garden, where she spent her final days. Now he had no choice. He closed his eyes and saw it. The flowers she planted, the bench where they sat together. The sunlight on her face as she smiled at him. The pain hit him like a wall, grief he had buried for years flooding back all at once. But he held the memory. He held it steady, even as tears ran down his face, even as his heart broke open. Because 12,000 people were depending on him. because humans did not give up, even when it hurt. "The template is complete," Eunice said softly. Initiating reset. The world began to change. Reality folded in on itself one final time, and then it unfolded. Taiho felt the world twist around him, felt gravity pull in a single direction for the first time in hours, felt the ground become solid beneath his feet. He opened his eyes and saw streets running straight, buildings standing upright, the sky above and the earth below, exactly where they belonged. City Block 7 had returned. It was not perfect. Some buildings were rotated a few degrees from their original positions. A few streets ended in places they shouldn't, creating new dead ends and strange corners. One apartment building had gained an extra floor that seemed to flicker in and out of existence, visible only on certain days. But the bones of the neighborhood were intact. The impossible had become possible again, and people were alive. Taiho watched as families reunited in the streets. Parents grabbed children and held them tight. Neighbors who had survived together cried on each other's shoulders. Emergency vehicles flooded into the area, medics rushing to help the injured, trucks bringing food and water for the survivors. Yuna collapsed against a wall, exhausted. Her scanner hung limply from her hand. "We did it," she said. "I can't believe we actually did it." Minho was checking himself over, patting his chest like he expected to find a hole there. "I'm still alive. I was dead for a second back there, but I'm alive now. Does that make me lucky or unlucky?" "It makes you human," Taiho said. Director Beak arrived with a team of soldiers and medical staff. She looked at the restored neighborhood, the thousands of survivors filling the streets, at the impossible miracle they had achieved. For a moment, her professional mask slipped, and Taiho saw something like wonder in her eyes. "Final count," she said. 11,847 survivors. We lost 153 people to the initial inversion. But everyone who was still alive when we started the rescue, every single one of them made it out. 153 deaths were still too many. But 12,000 people had faced dimensional collapse, and 94% of them had survived. By any measure, it was a miracle. The Veluxy Consortium sent a formal delegation the next day. Counselor Veth stood before the cameras, his gray face unreadable, his voice carefully neutral. "We acknowledge that our assessment of human capabilities was incomplete," he said. "The Veluxy Consortium will withdraw its teleportation technology bid from human space. We will also provide compensation to the victims of this incident." Reporters shouted questions. Counselor Veth answered, "None of them." He simply turned and walked away, his diplomatic robes trailing behind him. Later, a recording was leaked to the news networks. It showed Veluxy engineers watching the rescue operation, their large eyes wide with disbelief. One of them spoke in the Veluxy language, and the translation ran across the bottom of the screen. The humans did not simply survive the inversion. They used it. They mapped it. They turned impossible geometry into a puzzle and solved it. Their minds are not limited to one spatial truth. They simply choose which reality to believe in, and then they make it real. The recording went viral. Humans across the galaxy shared it with pride. It became a symbol of something they had always known but rarely expressed. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the smartest or the most advanced. But they were the most stubborn, the most creative, the most impossible to kill. When reality broke, humans simply refused to accept it. In the weeks that followed, life returned to normal in City Block 7. Families moved back into their homes. Shops reopened. Children returned to school, though they now had something remarkable to talk about during Show Dash and Dash Tell. Grandmother Shin Bora became a local celebrity. News crews came from across the planet to interview the 71-year-old woman who had organized survivors in the middle of dimensional collapse. She answered their questions with patience and dry humor, and went back to her daily routine. She opened a small restaurant on the extra floor of her apartment building, the one that only existed on Tuesdays. On those days, her restaurant served the best soup in the city, and customers lined up for hours to experience a meal in a space that technically shouldn't be there. Teacher. Imnari received an award from the Galactic Transit Authority for her work during the crisis. Her crayon maps, drawn by third graders in the middle of disaster, were adopted as official emergency protocol. They taught navigation principles that alien scientists said were impossible. They were now required study material at 12 universities across the galaxy. Nara accepted the award with quiet grace, then returned to her classroom. She still taught third grade. She said it was the most important job in the world. Oh Minho filed an official report stating that he had technically died and been undied in the reversal zone. The paperwork was a nightmare. 3 different departments argued about whether he needed to file death benefits and then return them. Eventually, he gave up and used his unique status as an excuse to skip administrative meetings. No one could argue with a man who had literally come back from the dead. Park Yuna published a research paper titled Human Cognitive Flexibility in Non-Euclidean Environments. Was translated into 47 languages and became required reading at alien universities. She received offers from prestigious research institutions across the galaxy. She turned them all down. Choosing to stay in the field with Taiho, she said there was more to learn from cleaning up disasters than from studying them in a laboratory. Director Beek Sujin received 17 formal complaints from the Veluxy Consortium regarding her disrespectful attitude and threatening behavior during the crisis. She printed each complaint, framed it, and hung it on her office wall. She said they were the best performance reviews she had ever received. And Kong Taiho finally visited his wife's grave. He had not been there in 5 years. He had been too afraid of the pain, too afraid of the memories. But the mission had forced him to face them, and now the fear was gone. He stood before the simple stone marker and remembered her garden. He remembered her smile. He remembered the life they had built together and the future they had lost. He cried. Then he smiled. Then he said goodbye. When he returned to the office, Yuna was waiting with a new case file. A cargo ship had phased halfway through an asteroid during a botched teleport jump. 30 crew members were trapped in quantum superposition, existing in 2 places at once. Alien experts said recovery was impossible. Yuna held up the file. Think we can fix it? Taiho looked at the impossible numbers, the hopeless projections, the grim assessments from species who did not understand what humans were capable of. He shrugged. We're human. We'll figure something out. They walked to the shuttle together, ready for the next disaster, ready for the next miracle, because that was what humans did. They faced the impossible, and they made it possible. One cleanup at a time.